Welcome to tonight's sleep story. Let's drift into a soothing story together as you begin your journey into a restful and rejuvenating sleep. As the soft light of early morning streamed through the windows, casting delicate shadows on the old wooden floors, you felt the cool, crisp air of autumn swirling around you. The scent of earth and fallen leaves drifted into the room, filling your lungs with a sense of calm and freshness. You stood by the window, watching the world awaken slowly outside, the trees in the yard shaking off their last remnants of the night's dew. The first rays of sunlight catching on the rooftops like tiny gold threads. This morning, there was a stillness in the air, a sense of peace that felt almost unusual. It was as if the world was waiting for something, for you to take a step forward, for you to start a new day with a quiet determination. The feeling was unfamiliar but comforting, like the first breath after a long, peaceful sleep. You had not expected this moment of clarity to come now. Not so suddenly, but there it was. After months of uncertainty, of questioning your choices, and the direction your life had been heading, this was the moment where you could feel a shift, something subtle but undeniable. For the first time in a long time, you didn't feel rushed. You didn't feel the familiar, suffocating pressure to make decisions or to find answers immediately. Instead, you felt an overwhelming sense of acceptance of where you were, of what you had, and of the journey you had walked thus far. This was the start of something new, not because everything had changed overnight, but because you had finally started to look at things differently. The weight that had been weighing on your shoulders, the constant feeling of hurry, was gone. For the first time in ages, you simply felt like being dawed as you stepped away from the window. You turned to look around the room, your gaze falling on the items that had accumulated over the years. The books stacked on the coffee table, the faded photos on the walls, the simple comforts of your home. They all seemed so much more meaningful now. Not because they had changed, but because you had. Each piece of furniture, each photograph, was now a reminder of your journey, your growth, and the experiences that had brought you here. That you were not here just by chance. You had arrived at this place of quiet reflection by choice. You had made the decision to stop running, to stop fighting the world around you, and to simply let yourself be. And in doing so, you had found a kind of freedom that had eluded you for so long. The quiet sounds of nature outside, the rustling of leaves, the chirping of birds in the distance seemed to speak directly to your soul. They weren't loud or demanding. They were simply there, as if they were waiting for you to notice them, to acknowledge their presence. The world outside was alive, just as you were. And in this moment, you felt connected to everything around you in a way you had never felt before. You could hear the soft ticking of the clock on the wall, and as it echoed in the room, you realized that you were no longer in a rush to move forward. The clock ticked, but you didn't need to catch up anymore. You were simply moving with time now, like a leaf caught in a gentle current, allowing the flow of life to take you where it may dot. With a soft sigh, you moved toward the kitchen, the familiar scent of coffee brewing filling the air. The warmth from the stove comforted you, wrapping around you like a gentle embrace. The day was unfolding before you, a blank canvas waiting for your brush to touch it. But for now, there was no need for plans, no need for answers. The only thing that mattered was the quiet present, the peace you had found in this moment. As you sat down to drink your coffee, your mind began to wander, but not with the usual stress and uncertainty. This time, your thoughts felt different, more grounded, more settled. You thought of the path ahead, but for the first time, you didn't feel the need to hurry toward it. You didn't need to control everything. All you needed to do was move forward one step at a time. Outside, the sun climbed higher in the sky, and you smiled to yourself. Today was the beginning of something new, not because everything had changed overnight, but because you had decided to embrace the present moment. The world had always been beautiful. It was you who had been blind to its quiet wonders. Now, everything felt different, more vibrant, more alive. And so, you took the first step toward a life lived in peace and acceptance and in gentle progress. There was no rush, no pressure, just the soft unfolding of each new moment. The morning drifted by slowly, and as the day unfolded, you realized something important. It wasn't the world that needed to change. It was your perspective of it. For so long, you had been chasing after a version of life that never quite felt right. The expectations, the rush to achieve, the constant pressure, it had all built up over time, creating an internal storm. Now, though, you felt different. You felt free. It wasn't because anything around you had fundamentally changed. It was because you had finally allowed yourself to change. As you sipped the warm coffee, the scent of it mixed with the crisp, fresh air outside. The sun was higher now, spilling golden light across the small village that stretched beyond your window. The houses, the gardens, and the winding roads were bathed in the light of a new day. And for the first time, you weren't rushing to be somewhere else. The quiet moments in the morning felt almost sacred now. You thought about how often in the past you had rushed through life, missing the beauty of simple moments. How often had you skipped past the small things, like the way sunlight catches on the leaves of a tree, or the way the wind carries the scent of flowers from the garden? Now, in these moments, everything was alive with possibility. You no longer felt the need to push forward, to jump to the next thing. The present moment, with its stillness, was enough. You set the cup down on the table and stood, moving toward the window. The village outside seemed unchanged, but it felt so different in this new light. There was a certain softness in the air now. Everything seemed more accessible. The small garden outside had taken on a new significance, the flowers blooming with a quiet beauty, as if to remind you that even in stillness, there's growth. You stepped outside into the cool air, letting it wash over you. The feeling of the earth beneath your feet grounded you, bringing you into the moment. You walked slowly down the path, the sound of your footsteps the only noise you could hear. You passed by the old oak tree that had stood in the corner of your yard for as long as you could remember. Its gnarled branches reached upward, an eternal witness to the years gone by. As you walked deeper into the garden, you felt a deep sense of connection to the earth, to the present moment, and to the world around you. The flowers were still in bloom, their delicate petals unfolding as if they too were savoring the moment. The fragrance of lavender and rose filled the air, and you inhaled deeply, letting the scent calm you. There was no rush, no destination, just you, the garden, and the world that had always been waiting for you to notice Dot in this newfound stillness. You reflected on how much of your life had been spent chasing after things you thought would bring happiness, only to find that happiness was always fleeting. Now you realized that happiness wasn't something to chase. It wasn't something that could be obtained through doing more, achieving more, or reaching some distant goal. Happiness was in the here and now, and the quiet peace that came with just being present in your own life. You had been running for so long, but now you saw that stopping was exactly what you needed. The garden was still, the leaves rustling gently in the breeze. And in that moment, you understood something. Deep within, life was not about striving, but about being. Being present in the moment, letting things unfold as they were meant to, and trusting that everything would work out in its own time. Asterisk the quiet hum of the world around you, the rhythm of the trees, the subtle sway of the flowers reminded you that there was no need to force anything. Everything was unfolding perfectly in its own time. The days continued to pass, and with each one, you found yourself more at ease with the world around you. The rhythm of life, once loud and hurried, beat now felt more like a slow and deliberate dance. There was a grace to the way the world unfolded each day, no longer a race to the next moment, but an invitation to be fully present in the here and now. Dot, as the afternoon sun bathed the garden in golden light, you found yourself sitting by the same old oak tree, its broad branches stretching above you like the arms of a wise elder. You felt its calm energy, the weight of its years, and the quiet resilience in its presence. It had stood through storms, through the changes of seasons, and still it remained. In that moment, you realized that the tree had become more than just part of the landscape. It had become a symbol of your own journey. Life, much like the tree, was not about perfection, but about presence. It wasn't about achieving some ideal version of yourself or your world. It was about growth, the natural unfolding of events, and the willingness to accept things as they came. You weren't in control of everything, and that was okay. In fact, that was more than okay. It was liberating. Dot, as you closed your eyes, you could hear the gentle hum of the world around you, the rustle of leaves, the soft chirping of birds, the faint whisper of the wind as it played with the grass. It was a symphony of nature, a constant reminder that everything was always in motion, always changing. Yet, there was peace in the rhythm of this change, a comfort in knowing that the seasons would continue to turn. The sun would rise, and life would move forward, whether you hurried or not. You thought of your past, of the times when you had fought against the current, when you had struggled to keep up with the world's demands, but now you understood. It wasn't about trying to outrun time. It was about moving with it, flowing alongside it, embracing each moment as it came. The urgency, the pressure, all of it had faded, and in its place, there was a quiet understanding. You didn't need to do anything, you simply needed to be. The light began to shift, casting long shadows on the ground. It was the kind of evening that held both peace and possibility, as though the world was saying, "Here, this is enough. You didn't have to seek more. You were exactly where you needed to be at this moment with this life, just as it was." You stood and stretched, your arms above your head, taking in a deep breath. The cool evening air felt refreshing against your skin, and for the first time in a long time, you truly felt alive, not because of anything grand or extraordinary, but because you had finally embraced the beauty of simplicity, the peace of quiet moments, and the truth that this right here was enough. You glanced toward the horizon, the sky painted in soft hues of orange and pink. There was no rush, no need to move forward quickly. The world could wait. You had learned to savor the present, to find joy in the stillness, and to trust that everything would unfold in its own time. And with that thought, you felt a deep sense of gratitude for this moment, for your journey, and for the quiet strength you had found within yourself. As the days drifted into weeks, you found yourself returning to this place of stillness, like a quiet river that, once flowing, settled into a slow and steady stream. There was no rush, no need for urgency. It was as if time had slowed down, allowing you to sink deeply into the beauty of the present moment. The world continued its quiet dance, but you were no longer trying to keep up with it. Instead, you moved in harmony with its flow. You began to spend more time in the garden, allowing your senses to take in every detail. The earth beneath your feet felt solid, grounding you to the world. You noticed the way the sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting soft shadows on the ground, the gentle rustling of the branches as they swayed in the breeze. It was all so simple, yet so incredibly meaningful. Each day you spent in the garden, you found yourself becoming more attuned to the rhythms of nature. You noticed the small, seemingly insignificant moments, the way the dew glistened on the grass in the morning light, the sound of a bird flapping its wings in the distance, the scent of wet earth after the rain. These details, which had once gone unnoticed, now held deep significance. The simple act of being in the moment, of allowing yourself to fully experience the world around you, was enough. You had begun to understand something profound about life. That peace didn't come from external accomplishments or possessions, but from within. It wasn't about rushing toward a goal or chasing after the next thing. Peace came from acceptance, from letting go of the constant need to control, and from simply being with what is Dot sitting on the porch one afternoon. You watched as the sun began its slow descent, casting a golden hue over everything. The warmth of the fading light bathed your skin, and the coolness of the evening breeze kissed your face. You closed your eyes and took a deep breath, letting the air fill your lungs. In that moment, you were no longer caught up in the turbulence of the past, nor were you worrying about the future. You were simply here in the present, and that was enough. There was a quiet joy in knowing that the world didn't need to be fixed, that you didn't need to be in control of everything. In fact, surrendering to the natural flow of life brought you a sense of freedom you had never known before. You didn't need to force things to happen. Instead, you trusted that everything would unfold in its own time, just as the seasons change, just as the flowers bloom and fade. You stood and stretched, feeling the lightness in your body. The world around you seemed brighter, more alive, as if the very air had become infused with a new kind of energy. You were at peace, not because you had achieved something or because life had become perfect, but because you had chosen to embrace the present moment. In the act of accepting life as it was, you had found freedom. You walked back into the house, the evening air cooling your skin, and you smiled to yourself. Life had always been here just as it was, waiting for you to notice it. And now, in this quiet acceptance, you were finally living. The days had softened like the light filtering through the clouds, and with each passing moment, you found yourself more attuned to the peace that surrounded you. As you sat in the garden, the sounds of nature filling the air, you realized how far you had come. The restless energy that once pushed you to do, to strive, had quieted. The world had become less about accomplishment and more about presence. And in that realization, there was a sense of liberation. There was something almost sacred about the quiet mornings, the stillness that seemed to hang in the air, untouched by the demands of the world. Each moment was rich with possibility, even in its simplicity. The flowers in the garden no longer seemed like fleeting symbols of beauty. They were reminders of the quiet resilience of life itself. Each petal, each leaf was part of a much larger cycle, and like them, you were learning to trust in your own natural rhythm that you no longer fought the passing of time. In fact, time itself had become a gentle companion. It wasn't something to be feared or chased, but something that unfolded at its own pace with all its quiet beauty. The ticking of the clock, once a reminder of deadlines and expectations, now felt more like a soft metronome, guiding the moments without urgency. It was here, in the steady flow of time, that you found your peace. The garden became your sanctuary. You spent hours wandering through it, not with a sense of needing to finish, but with a deep appreciation for what was before you, the touch of the soil as you gently dug your hands into it, the scent of the earth after a fresh rain, the sight of the butterflies fluttering from one flower to another. All of these were moments to savor. There was no need to hurry. The pace of the world had slowed, and you were in sync with it. Asterisk, as you walked under the tree that had always stood tall in the garden, you placed your hand on its rough bark. It had been here long before you, its roots deep in the earth, its branches reaching up to the sky. It had weathered storms, stood through winters, and bloomed through spring. Yet it had never seemed in a hurry, never seemed to force its growth. It simply grew, simply lived, without rushing. And in its quiet strength, you found a reflection of your own journey. You took a moment to breathe deeply, inhaling the crisp air, feeling the warmth of the sun on your skin. The world around you had become a gentle reminder that life was not about striving or accomplishing. It was about being. You had learned to let go, to allow life to unfold at its own pace. In this surrender, you had found an unexpected kind of freedom, the simple joy of being in the present moment, of accepting everything just as it was, had given you the peace you had long sought. There was no longer a need to chase after happiness. It was already here, in the everyday moments, in the stillness, in the quiet strength of life itself. Dot as you watched the sun begin to set, casting a warm glow over the garden. You felt a deep sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the journey that had brought you here, for the lessons learned, and for the peace that now filled your heart. You realized that life, in all its complexity, was beautiful precisely because of its impermanence. Every moment, every breath was a gift, and you were finally able to appreciate it fully. The days became a gentle rhythm, like a soft melody playing in the background of your life. Each morning, the sun rose just as it had the day before, bathing the earth in its warm embrace. The sky, once an overwhelming vastness, now seemed like a trusted companion, a constant reminder that you were part of something far bigger than yourself. In these moments, you felt a deep connection to the world around you, an unspoken understanding that you were not alone, not lost, but simply moving with the flow of life. You began to notice that the pace of life was no longer something to be outrun. Instead, you began to move through your days with a quiet confidence, trusting that whatever came your way, you could meet it with grace. There was no longer a need, a full control. You had learned the importance of surrender, of allowing things to unfold as they would. It was a lesson you had learned from the world around you, from the flowing rivers, the whispering winds, and the ever-changing skies. Life was not something to be dominated. It was something to be experienced. The mornings were still your favorite time, the air crisp and cool as the world around you stretched awake. You would stand by the window for a few moments, taking in the scene outside, the light that slowly turned everything golden, the soft rustle of the trees, the delicate hum of life that was always present but often unnoticed. There was a quiet beauty in the way everything unfolded, the way the flowers bloomed, the way the seasons changed, the way the day gradually turned into night. And in these quiet moments, you began to realize something profound. You didn't need to force your own growth, nor did you need to rush through life in pursuit of something you couldn't even define. Growth wasn't a destination. It was a journey, a process that unfolded naturally, just as the seasons did. You had been so focused on reaching for some future, some ideal of who you should be, that you had forgotten the most important thing, to simply be. The first step was simply to trust in yourself, trust in the world, trust in the process of life. Each moment, no matter how small, held the potential for growth. You didn't have to go looking for it. It was already there, waiting to be discovered. And as you sat in your garden, surrounded by nature's quiet miracles, you felt at peace with where you were. You looked at the old oak tree once again, its gnarled roots reaching deep into the earth. In its branches, the birds were starting their morning songs, filling the air with soft, melodic notes. The sun was fully up now, its light bathing everything in a warm, golden glow. You smiled to yourself, knowing that you had found something precious, the ability to be content in the present, to trust the process of life, and to know that you were enough just as you were, For so long, you had been running, trying to reach some distant goal, trying to mold yourself into something you thought you needed to be. But now, you understood that life wasn't about striving. It was about trusting, about embracing the stillness and letting things unfold naturally. You didn't need to rush. You didn't need to chase anything. It was enough to simply be here, right now. The birds were still singing, the breeze was still blowing, and the world was still turning. And you were part of it all. The days had continued to unfold with the same peaceful rhythm, a steady, unhurried beat that seemed to stretch the hours and fill them with meaning. The more you settled into this new way of being, the more you realized how much of life you had overlooked in the past. It wasn't the big moments, the grand achievements, or the distant goals that truly mattered. It was the quiet moments, the soft murmur of the wind, the warmth of the sun on your skin, the laughter of children playing in the street that held the essence of what you had been seeking all along. You found joy in the simplest things now. The aroma of freshly brewed tea in the morning, the sound of the kettle whistling on the stove, the rustling of the trees as the breeze stirred their leaves. These things, once taken for granted, now felt like small miracles. In every detail, there was a sense of wonder, a quiet magic that had always been there, waiting for you to see it. One afternoon, you wandered into the garden again, drawn by the familiar pull of its calm. The flowers, still blooming in the soft light of late afternoon, seemed to smile at you, their petals open wide as though inviting you into their world. You crouched down beside the hydrangeas, the earth cool beneath your fingers, and you marveled at how each bloom was unique, how no two were ever exactly the same dot. It was the same with people. You thought everyone was on their own journey, blooming at their own pace in their own time. There was no need to compare or to rush ahead. Each moment of life was precious, just as it was. And just like the flowers, your own journey was unfolding exactly as it was meant to dot. As the evening drew near, the sunlight softened, casting a golden glow over the garden. You sat down on the porch, your back resting against the worn wooden chair, and closed your eyes. The soft hum of the world around you, the chirping of crickets, the distant call of an owl, it was all part of the symphony of life. You didn't need to be anywhere. You didn't need to do anything. You were exactly where you needed to be. And in that thought, a profound sense of peace washed over you. For so long, you had searched for happiness in achievements, in ambition, in the belief that success would bring you fulfillment. But now, you realize that true happiness didn't come from external accomplishments. It came from within, from the ability to appreciate the simple joys of life, to embrace the present moment, and to let go of the need to strive for something more. The evening deepened, and you stood, stretching your arms to the sky, feeling the cool night air wash over you. The stars were beginning to appear, twinkling softly above. You felt a quiet gratitude for the journey you had been on, for the lessons learned, and for the life that was unfolding around you. Everything had changed, but nothing had changed at all. You were still the same person, yet you had come to understand something far deeper. You had learned to find beauty in the ordinary, to find joy in the quiet, and to trust that life, just as it was more than enough. And in that truth, there was a deep, abiding sense of peace. As the days gently continued to pass, you began to understand the depth of what you had learned in this time of stillness. The moments you had spent in quiet reflection had led to an incredible transformation within you. You no longer felt the pull of the past or the anxiety of an uncertain future. The need to strive, to prove yourself, had slipped away, replaced by something deeper, something more essential. It was a quiet freedom that had emerged from your willingness to accept life as it was taught in the mornings. You no longer rushed through your day. You didn't need to check off a list of tasks or achieve some goal. Instead, you moved gently through the moments, savoring the stillness and the quiet joy of being. The garden, with its slow rhythm and soft beauty, had become a reflection of your own inner world. Each flower, each leaf, was a reminder that life does not need to be rushed. It simply needs to be lived. You began to find yourself in the small moments, in the act of watering the flowers, in the feeling of the soft earth between your fingers, in the way the sunlight streamed through the trees, casting golden patterns on the ground. These were the moments that mattered most. These were the moments where life was alive, vibrant, and full of possibility. Asterisk, it was in this space of stillness that you realized something profound. You were enough. The pressure to always do more, to always be more, had lifted. You didn't need to chase happiness. It was already present in the world around you, in the simple, beautiful moments you had once overlooked. Happiness wasn't found in the future, it was found here, in the quiet beauty of the present moment. The days continued to unfold with gentle consistency, and each day felt like a small victory. Not because you had achieved something grand, but because you had embraced the beauty of simplicity. You no longer felt the need to prove your worth or chase after something you thought would bring happiness. You had learned the art of accepting life, of allowing it to unfold as it would, without forcing it. You had learned that happiness wasn't something to be obtained, but something to be experienced. The sky above had shifted again. The air was cooler now, and the first signs of autumn began to show in the leaves, turning shades of gold and red. The changing seasons mirrored your own inner transformation, a gradual shift, a natural process of growth. And like the leaves that would soon fall, you knew that you didn't need to hold on to the past. It had served its purpose, and now you were ready to let go and step into this next chapter of your journey. Asterisk, as you sat by the window, gazing out at the garden, you realized that this new way of living, this way of being present and embracing the quiet moments, was not just a phase. It was a lifestyle, a way of seeing the world and experiencing life with a fresh perspective. In the stillness and the acceptance, you had found a way to live that was more peaceful, more fulfilling, and more connected to the world around you. With this thought, you smiled, knowing that the true beauty of life lay in its simplicity, in the quiet moments, and in the freedom that came from simply being taught. As time continued to flow, you began to see how deeply your perception of the world had changed. Each day now felt like an unfolding story, each moment a small verse that contributed to the beauty of your life. The pressures and anxieties that once weighed heavily on your mind had softened like heavy clouds that eventually part to let the light shine through. You found that there was something incredibly powerful in the simplicity of being present, just being alive, breathing in the moments as they came without rushing to the next. The mornings had become sacred to you, the early light filtering through the windows, the soft rustling of leaves outside, the fresh smell of the earth waking up. Each of these things spoke to you now in a way they hadn't before. They were no longer just part of the background of your life. They were real, they were here, and you could now feel their presence deeply. You had found something profound in these quiet mornings, something that could not be grasped by ambition, by striving, or by chasing external goals. You realized that you had spent so much of your life looking for meaning outside of yourself, thinking that happiness was something to be found, to be obtained. But now you understood that happiness and peace were not something that could be captured, hoarded, or earned. They were already here in the very act of living. Each day, each small breath was a gift, and yet, even as you understood this truth, you were learning to let go of expectations, to stop needing things to be a certain way. There was grace in not needing everything to be perfect. The world had become softer, and so had you. You no longer felt the need to force anything into being. You were no longer attached to outcomes or results. You understood that life had a natural flow to it, and all you needed to do was ride along with it, trusting that everything would come to you at the right moment. The quiet wisdom of the trees. In the garden, the soft hum of life moving around you filled you with a sense of deep contentment. You understood now that everything had its own time, and rhythm flowers bloomed in their time. Storms passed, the seasons changed. There was no rush, no need to hurry, just the natural unfolding of life. You too were part of that cycle, not separate from it, but one with it. The beauty of being alive was in the simplicity of it all, in the unspoken connection between you and the world around you. As you sat in the garden, the soft evening light warming your skin, you closed your eyes and allowed yourself to sink into the earth beneath you. You felt the ground cool beneath your palms, the rich texture of the soil beneath your fingers. The world felt alive, and you were part of it. The cool breeze carried the scent of flowers and fresh earth, and for the first time you truly felt that everything was in its place, no need to control, no need to force anything. You were simply here, and in that truth, there was a profound peace. The birds were singing, the wind whispered through the trees, and the earth carried you gently like a silent song, like the softest of lullabies. Everything in its own perfect rhythm, everything exactly as it was meant to be. And for the first time, you realized that was enough. The gentle passage of time became your companion. You had learned the art of letting go, not through struggle or force, but through a quiet, natural surrender. In the stillness of your garden, amidst the slow dance of the seasons, you had discovered something fundamental about the flow of life, its simplicity. Life didn't need to be grasped tightly. nor did it need to be driven relentlessly forward. Life was already unfolding, as it should. You walked through the garden in the early evening, the sun casting a soft golden glow over the flowers and trees. The air was cool but inviting, and you felt an overwhelming sense of peace. There was no destination ahead, no hurry to reach some distant future. There was only now, only this, only the space between your feet and the earth, only the feeling of the breeze as it kissed your skin. You sat on a wooden bench under the shade of an old oak tree, its branches stretching outward like welcoming arms. You let out a deep sigh, not of exhaustion, but of contentment. The world had begun to feel more like a gentle rhythm than a chaotic cacophony. There were moments of struggle, yes, but they no longer held the same weight. The struggles were part of the natural order, just as the stormy clouds give way to the sun's light. The difficult moments passed and gave way to calm. Your mind, once restless and racing from one thought to the next, had become still. It wasn't that the world had stopped, it was that you had stopped fighting it. You had learned to embrace it in all its complexity, and that acceptance had brought you peace. The quiet strength of life was in its flow, not in its resistance. You had learned to trust that the universe would unfold as it should, and you were part of it, not apart from it. In the quiet space of the garden, you began to reflect on how far you had come. The journey you had undertaken wasn't one of great ambition or loud achievements. It wasn't a journey of triumphs and victories. Instead, it had been a quiet process of surrendering, letting go of expectations, releasing the weight of perfection, and trusting the natural rhythms of life. It was in this letting go that you had found true freedom. You no longer felt the pressure to meet the world's expectations. You were no longer bound by the need to do more or be more. The very freedom you had sought in the past had always been within reach. It had simply required you to stop grasping for it. Now you understood that the key to freedom was simply allowing yourself to simply exist in the present moment, accepting life just as it was. The birds were quiet now, settling in for the night, and the evening air carried a crispness that only deepened the sense of peace. The garden was still, save for the occasional rustle of leaves, and you found yourself deeply grateful for this simplicity, this stillness, this peaceful existence. You had found your place in the world, not because of some external achievement or recognition, but simply because you had learned to live in harmony with it. You closed your eyes for a moment, breathing deeply. The rhythm of your breath was slow and steady, matching the beat of the world around you. You knew that the journey was far from over, but for now there was no rush. You were right where you needed to be. Life would continue its natural course, just as the seasons would continue to change. And you too would continue to grow, but at your own pace, in your own time. As the seasons subtly shifted once again, you began to notice the passage of time not as a relentless force, but as a comforting companion. The early morning light, which had once seemed hurried and fleeting, now held a sense of calm and warmth, embracing the earth without urgency. You no longer measured time by accomplishments or goals, but by the simple rhythms of nature and your own life. You had learned to embrace the ebb and flow of time, to appreciate that the present moment was just as valuable as any grand future or past triumph. Asterisk each morning you woke, feeling more attuned to the quiet passage of time. There was no longer a need to rush to the next task, to look ahead, to anticipate what might come. You had let go of the urge to control the future, and instead, you allowed yourself to simply be in the moment. You would rise, feeling the soft warmth of the bed beneath you, stretching gently, savoring the coolness of the early air that had started to fill the room. The world was there, waiting to unfold, without pressure. Your time in the garden had deepened your connection to the world around you. You would wander among the plants, each moment an opportunity to engage with life's small, perfect details. The quiet dance of the leaves in the wind, the soft fragrance of the flowers, the way the light changed and danced on the leaves. The more you watched, the more you saw that everything had its place. There was no need for rushing. Every part of life was unfolding in its own time, and you realized that you too were a part of that natural process. In the evenings, you would sit by the window, the faint glow of sunset softening the room, and feel the slow passage of the day. The sky, painted in gentle hues of purple, orange, and pink, seemed to stretch on forever, offering you a reminder of how small and fleeting moments truly were. There was something deeply comforting about the realization that time did not demand anything of you. It did not push you. You were simply part of it. And in that thought, you found a deep and profound sense of peace. Asterisk, the days continued to pass, each one a precious fragment of time that held its own quiet beauty. You had stopped fighting the natural flow of life, and instead you had learned to move with it, to trust in the gentle unfolding of the moments that made up your world. You were no longer tethered to the past or obsessed with the future. Life was just here, in the small and simple moments that filled your days. In the garden, you sat often, watching the seasons gradually shift. The flowers bloomed their petals, unfolding as if they knew exactly when it was their time to shine. The trees swayed with the wind, their branches moving gracefully, shedding old leaves while preparing for the new. You could feel yourself mirrored in the cycles of the garden, the way you too were learning to let go of the old and welcome the new. Asterisk, it wasn't just about letting go of material things. It was about releasing the burdens that had once defined you, the need for constant achievement, the pressure to be more than you were. You had discovered the freedom that came with acceptance and trust, with simply allowing yourself to be who you were, without needing to measure up to anything or anyone. The garden had taught you that life was a process of constant transformation, and you were learning to trust that process. In each moment, whether calm or chaotic, there was purpose, there was meaning. Time was no longer something you feared or fought against. It was something you embraced, something that held you gently as you moved through your journey. As you sat beneath the old oak tree, watching the sunlight filter through the branches and dance upon the ground, you realized that this was what it all came down to. There was no need for loud declarations or grand achievements. Life you had discovered was not about chasing after something constantly. It was about learning to be in the moment, to feel the rhythm of life beneath your feet and in your heart. The garden, which had once felt like just a backdrop to your day, now seemed like a living, breathing entity. Its quiet beauty was something you had come to cherish deeply, finding solace in its simple, consistent presence. The leaves that fluttered in the breeze were no longer just a passing feature. They had become a part of your daily existence, like the breath you took, subtle but essential dot each morning. As you stood by the window watching the first light of daybreak over the horizon, you felt connected to something bigger than yourself. The world was waking up around you, but it wasn't an urgent, frantic rush to begin. Instead, it was a slow and deliberate unfolding, like the soft, measured opening of a flower. The earth wasn't rushing into the day. It was moving gently, effortlessly, taking its time. And in those moments, you realized that you too were a part of this greater flow. There was a peacefulness in simply existing and letting go of the drive to prove yourself, to live up to expectations. In this quiet space, you had found that freedom to simply be. You were no longer burdened by the weight of the world or the need to meet some impossible standard. You had surrendered the illusion that you needed to do something more to feel worthy. You could feel the air around you, cool yet comforting, and the faint scent of earth and fresh grass filled your senses. It wasn't just the physical sensations that grounded you. It was the stillness that accompanied them. Your mind, once filled with a flurry of thoughts and anxieties, was now calm. The quiet space within your heart mirrored the silence of the garden, and in this peaceful coexistence, you felt a sense of fulfillment that words couldn't describe. You spent the next few hours wandering through the garden, touching the petals of flowers, feeling the soil beneath your fingers. Every step felt more meaningful than the one before. You were moving toward something, and yet it felt like you were moving deeper into yourself with each step. The seasons continued to shift around you, but there was no rush. There was no need for hurry. You had come to understand that everything had its time, its pace, and its place in the quiet moments. Surrounded by nature's peace, you began to reconnect with the truth that had always been there. Life is not about what you can accumulate or achieve. It is about embracing the journey as it is. There's beauty in simply living and waking up each day and experiencing the world as it comes. There's peace in surrendering to the moment and letting life unfold without resistance. For the first time, you understood that you are enough, just as you are. The garden, the birds singing in the trees, the way the light shifted with the time of day, these were not just elements of the world you inhabited. They were reminders of your place in it all, of the interconnectedness of everything around you. And with that realization came a deep sense of peace. You stood there, watching the sun dip lower in the sky, casting a warm glow over the garden, and for the first time in a long while, you felt complete. The world was still, and so were you. There was no need for anything else. You were exactly where you needed to be, as the days stretched on and the seasons began to shift. You found yourself even more attuned to the cycles of the world around you. You no longer felt the need to chase. time to push forward. There was an inherent trust now in the unfolding of life and its natural rhythms. The slow passage of days no longer felt like a burden, but a gentle reminder that everything was unfolding as it should, and you were a part of it. Each morning, the sun would rise, casting its golden light over the garden, and you would stand there, taking it in. You watched the world wake up with you, quietly, gently, without the rush of modern life. The birds would sing their first songs of the day, the flowers would stretch toward the light, and the soft rustle of leaves would fill the air. It was as if the universe itself had exhaled, letting out a long, contented breath. You felt a sense of peace and knowing that you didn't have to do anything to make life happen. You didn't have to force it. It would happen in its own time, just like the leaves falling from the trees in autumn or the flowers blooming in spring. You were part of that cycle. You were part of something bigger, something timeless, an eternal. As you continued to spend time in the garden, you began to notice how the plants, the flowers, and even the soil had their own sense of purpose. Everything had a role to play. The bees came to gather nectar from the flowers. The birds came to rest in the branches, and the trees provided shade and shelter. There was no competition, no hurry. Each element played its part in the grand symphony of life. This realization filled you with a deep sense of gratitude. Gratitude not for the things you had or the achievements you had gained, but for the sheer act of living, for the moments of peace, for the stillness, for the simple joy of being present in the world. You stood by the garden once more, your hands resting gently on the wooden fence, the cool breeze brushing your face. The world seemed to be alive in a way you hadn't noticed before. The air felt full of possibility, and yet there was no urgency, no need to race ahead. There was only the gentle unfolding of time, one moment at a time, and in that moment, you understood something profound. You were enough just as you are. You didn't need to be anything more than you already were. The pressure to become something, to chase after something, had disappeared. You were content with simply being. The garden, the air, the sky, it was all part of the same peaceful whole. You were connected to everything, and everything was connected to you. The quiet beauty of the world around you reflected the quiet beauty within you. And for the first time, you felt at peace with that as the days gently slipped into one another. The rhythm of life grew ever more seamless, and you found yourself living more deeply in the present than ever before. The landscape before you, whether it was the garden, the soft hills in the distance, or the endless sky overhead, had become a mirror to your soul. Every glance, every breath, every step was suffused with the kind of peaceful presence that could only be described as a quiet fulfillment. You no longer needed the distractions of the world to feel complete. In fact, the more you embraced the stillness, the more you realized how unnecessary everything else had been. The clamor of daily life, the relentless pursuit of external validation had all faded into the background. It no longer mattered. You had learned to live from within, to connect with the deep, unspoken rhythm of the world, and to understand that true contentment wasn't something to be chased. It was a gift already within you, waiting to be unwrapped. Asterisk the soft rustling of leaves in the breeze, the distant hum of insects moving through the air, and the occasional chirp of a bird settling on a branch were the sounds of your new world. You allowed yourself to fully inhabit this moment, with no sense of time pulling at you, with no rush to move on to the next thing. You could simply breathe and be. This, you realized, was the greatest gift, just being here, fully, without the constant need for movement. The garden around you had also transformed, its once bare branches now covered in soft blossoms and rich greenery. The passage of time had revealed the deep, quiet beauty that always existed. The flowers had bloomed at their own pace. The trees had grown stronger with each passing season, and the earth had enriched itself with every breath of air, every drop of rain. You too had bloomed in your own time, in your own way. For the first time in your life, you realized that you weren't waiting for something to happen. There was no need to wait for the future or regret the past. That was enough. It was all there was. You had learned that the present moment, as quiet and subtle as it might be, was the only place where true peace and fulfillment could be found. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a soft golden light across the landscape, you sat quietly, taking it all in. The world was beautiful not because it was perfect, but because it simply was. And you too were perfect in your own right. Not because you had achieved something or were striving for something more, but because you were simply being. You were enough. Asterisk. The light grew softer, the air cooler, and you felt yourself sinking deeper into the moment, into the peaceful embrace of life as it was. There was no need for more. You were part of the whole, and in this moment, you felt the profound sense of belonging, of being connected to something greater than yourself. You knew that life would continue to unfold as it should, and you were content, knowing that all you needed to do was be present. As the evening sky filled with stars, you closed your eyes gently, feeling a deep peace wash over you. The quiet fulfillment of now settled into your being, and in that moment, you knew that this was what it meant to live fully, to live in harmony with the world, and most importantly, with yourself. And in this quiet surrender, in this deep acceptance, you found peace.